Hello and welcome to our third podcast in this series on spiritual resilience. I'm Ian Arthur, I'm from the Salvation Army in Port Glasgow, and I have three guests with me today, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves before we start talking about kindness. So if we start here and work around.
So I'm Laura Reilly, I'm manager at Belville Community Garden in Greenock.
Hi, I'm Alison Bunce, I lead Compassion at Inverclyde.
Hi, my name's Don Thomas, and I'm the lead pastor for Inverclyde Vineyard Church.
Excellent. So thank you all for coming. Now, this is going to be a really informal chat. Those that have listened to the other couple of podcasts will already have worked out that there is no set structure or formula to Ian's head. So we're thinking today about stories of kindness. We've thought about loss already. We've thought about hope. And one of the themes that kept coming up when we were thinking of what should we structure this around was firstly the idea about telling stories to each other, because that's always a good way to communicate and engage with people, but also this idea of kindness and what that means and how we've seen that. So I'm going to open it up and ask if anyone has a story of kindness or a story about kindness that they want to share, and then we'll bounce off that.
Yeah, I can share a story. I often think about kindness in three ways. So the first way I would think is about, random acts of kindness that you don't really get involved in, that you do and it's anonymous and you walk away and you're not really investing yourself. Or relational kindness, where perhaps you see somebody in need and you go up and you offer who you are to that person, and it might be that it ends up that you give somebody a hug, so there's an investment there. But there's this thing called radical kindness, and radical kindness comes with risk. So I guess I'd like to share maybe a story about how Compassion at Inverclyde was involved being really radically kind. I got a phone call by this person's friend to ask. He was really concerned about his friend. He was really unwell. He had no support going in. He lived alone in the community. And he just said that he was given our name and could we help? And I explained that we weren't a statutory service or whatever. It was ordinary people who could help ordinary people. And he said that was fine. He had his permission, and I went myself up to his house. And I'm a nurse to trade, so I have a clinical head on quite a lot of the time. And when I saw the man at the door, he clearly was very, very, very unwell. He was very symptomatic from what was going on with an illness. So we went in and sat in the chair and we chatted, and he had two big Alsatian dogs. And I said, we can help, but not sure what we could do because we're not statutory, but what matters the most to you and how can we help most? And he said, well, I need help with my dogs because he was crawling on his hands and knees down 2 flights of stairs to let the dogs out the back because he physically couldn't get up, and he had lots of physical symptoms going on. So I persuaded him to think of allowing me to contact his GP because he hadn't been in contact with his GP, and the man was dying, and I could clearly see that he was dying. He was young and he was estranged from his family, and I was thinking, looking at these dogs, thinking, okay, yeah, we'll help. Now that was a real risk, because I offered something that I didn't know whether we could do or not, but I knew that he was desperate and needed some help. So he agreed that I could contact his GP. He agreed that I could look to see if I could get him to walk the dogs. And he agreed that somebody could come in and help him do some housework. And that was the start of the relationship, which didn't last long before he died, but the difference that we made was quite phenomenal. So anyway, I went out that man's house and I sat in my car, and we communicate through Facebook. And on my Facebook page I said, can anybody help walk 2 dogs? And within, 5 minutes, I probably had 30 people who were willing to go and walk the dogs. So I quickly phoned Disclosure Scotland, and they said you don't need a disclosure to walk a dog. So I organised 30 strangers to walk this man's dogs from that moment in time. And it was an incredible help, and I don't have time just now to tell the whole story, but that was a real risk, but it made such a difference to that man's life. And just to end the story would be that we also put a message on Facebook asking if his daughter was there in the ether. And about 3 days later, somebody contacted me and said, I think that I'm his daughter, and I think that this person you're talking about is my dad. And they got together and they saw each other before he died. So that was incredible, but that was a real risk, but it was a real kindness.
And there's lots of risks within that as well. It's kind of, you've got like the obvious risks of having two big old Alsatians that you don't know. You've got the risk of 30 strangers going out to help him. You've got the risk of family dynamics kicking off. But I love that kind of that radical kindness definition. I think it's one of those things that actually, where there is the most impact, there's often the most risk, isn't it?
I love the way that you said that it was person-centred, wasn't it? It wasn't forcing your view of kindness upon them. It was like what makes the most difference to you. And I suppose that's a lot of some of the things that happen at Belville. It's based on what do people need at that moment. What does kindness mean for them? What would improve their lives at this very moment in time, not forcing things. We're a bit of a stepping stone at Belville, I suppose, and that way we can show our kindness, just nudging people along to where they want to be just a little bit, not expecting too much or, trying to force our way of thinking on them. It's just letting them move at their own pace and be accepted in our sort of big jumbled family, multi-generational people. I think that's how we can help most, and I love your look at kindness. It's just in the little things sometimes. It's the radical kindnesses, but also it's the smile or the few bunches of flowers, like we found out of COVID, didn't we, Alison? When we were putting out the food parcels, it's the little touches that you put in the food parcels that can make a difference as well to people's standard of life. Those little moments of kindness.
And also how kindness often costs us something. Whether it is pausing to think about someone else when you feel like you're flat out and busy and I've got so many important things to think about, it costs that moment, or in some of the more radical ways it's more costly. And I think leading a church, one of the most encouraging but challenging things is reminding people we're not trying to create a community where it's all people who just like each other and who are like-minded and who are kind to each other because they're on the same journey or they're the same personality or they like each other. But what does it look like for us to be kind to people who are utterly different from us, who come from a different background, who we might have clashed with previously, and actually thinking about how that was Jesus' model and how he actually taught us to be kind to those who maybe others would not want to be kind to. And I think that's sometimes where the risk is involved in how, personally, I feel challenged about that I might find it easy to be kind to some people. It comes naturally. It doesn't feel that costly. But who can I be kind to that actually Jesus wants me to be kind to because they have value, not because I think, they're a friend of mine, or I'll get something back from this. Just it's the right thing to do in that moment.
And I guess that's the thing, is that if it's an act of kindness, it is that little bit more selfless. I'll not say it's entirely selfless, because I don't think anything we do is entirely selfless, because if you're kind to someone, you get a nice, bouncy, happy feeling of, I've just helped someone. But actually, it's the risk involved in that, whether it's a little thing of, if I give someone a bunch of flowers, they might throw it back in my face. It's still, there's still a risk, however minimal that might be. But actually, it is that thing of, how do you then relate kindness when it's someone that you don't know, when it's someone you haven't got history with, when it's someone you might not like. And I think what I love from that story, Alison, was that, the 30-odd folk that replied within 5 minutes actually is the fact that quite often we can perhaps convince ourselves or see the media and think, actually, people just aren't kind anymore. But actually, if you ask, lots of people are. In fact, the majority, I think, we've seen over the pandemic are, and when you look at all the community volunteers that have just sprung up and, the folk, so he said ordinary people helping ordinary people. It's not been the big organisations, it's been neighbours helping each other.
And I think some people just need permission. to be kind.
Yeah.
They just need.
And a specific request is easier, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be
Yeah.
kind to as a sort of a general, what can I do to help? It's better. Just that specific request to ask someone else is a lot easier to acknowledge.
Because do you think as well there's almost a fear of being kind then? Or perhaps a fear of putting yourself forward, or, like when you do a first aid course, you always have the point where the tutor will always say, you will not get sued for doing first aid on someone, please don't be scared. That actually to a level, we have a point of thinking, well, if I go and help that person.
I think you see it a lot around bereavement, don't you? People don't know how to act to people, and often they ignore the fact that people have been bereaved. They don't know how to show kindness. Whereas, in fact, if there's a specific request of what that person needs, whether it's a meal or a dog walk or something, that's a lot easier for people to be able to show their kindness through. Yeah. Because people are so busy, aren't they? Your life just gets swept away, and you don't have time sometimes to remember people who are struggling a wee bit.
Well, when I'm working with children, I often say, how can you be kind? Think about ways in which you can. And we talk about kind words, kind actions, and kind attitudes. I don't think that's just for children. I think that our daily lives can be changed entirely by just, taking on those three things. You choose your attitude when you get up in the morning. It may be that you choose you don't want to go to school or whatever, and so you're kind of thinking, and you feel a bit grumpy, or you can choose to think, absolutely, I'm going to go to school and I want to be, or in my own life, get up in the morning and think, I want to be kind today. I'm going to try my very best to be the very best person that I can be today.
Yeah.
Exactly. And even the step before that as well, of having self-kindness.
Yeah.
I think often the people who are most kind to others are those who are able to be kind to themselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes those who have been through incredibly challenging things and who are kind of stripped of that self-kindness often find it hard to then reach out to others with kindness as well. And so taking that step back of, actually, have I been kind to myself today? Have I, been in my head, giving myself a hard time? Or have I actually shown the kind of kindness to myself that I want to be showing to others too?
That's really important.
Yeah.
Self-compassion is really important.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that came up in our conversation previously about hope as well, when we had some guys that had been through recovery who said, and it was that thing of actually, it's getting to the point where you can actually love yourself because of that hope. And at the same, it's, be able to be kind to yourself first, to put your own mask on, to actually do the self-care.
Yeah.
Yes, I think if you can exercise self-kindness, you're going to be better at passing that kindness on. I think also there's a danger perhaps that a lot of people do a lot of kind acts for others because they can't be kind to themselves. That a lot of time it's, well, actually, if I walk someone's dog, it makes me feel better, or take someone's pet to the vet, or take a meal around, do a food parcel, do someone's shopping, and invest in someone else, then that means I can be kind to them, and that in effect stops me beating myself up or distracts from beating myself up. And I think there's a kind of balance to be had there, isn't there?
Yeah. When I was growing up, I don't think the concept of being kind to yourself was spoken about.
No.
It's only very recently that the importance of self-kindness and compassion has been, and I know that they do teach it in school now, and which is fantastic. But when I first thought about kindness to yourself, it almost was a bit kind of alien.
Yeah.
You don't really do that. You can show kindness to somebody else, but how do you show it to yourself?
Yeah. And it was, I guess as well, you've got, because certainly when I was growing up, people were signed off work for mental health reasons. They had problems with their nerves. It wasn't, they need to look after themselves and we need to help them here. It was, there's obviously some problem here with your nervous system that can't be helped.
Yeah.
Whereas now there is that onus on, no, actually you need to not beat yourself up. And I think certainly coming from a kind of good Protestant Christian tradition of self-loathing, where in Sunday school we used to back to sing songs like J-O-Y, Jesus first, yourself last, and others in between. No word of a lie. And we loved it because he went to the tune of Jingle Bells, so you could sing it. But I think there is that encultured thing that actually to be kind involves putting others first. To put others first involves putting yourself last, and putting yourself last means you don't matter. And I think that's something that certainly I often come against.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also that sort of brings you on to what does kindness mean for other people who are not necessarily neurotypical. So it's sort of, it's not forcing ideas of kindness onto others that will be good for them. Don't you hear? If she goes out and she, goes to those friends, that will be good for her. That's what you think would be good, but actually what that person wants to do is they want to decompress a bit and chill out on their own, and actually if you allow that to happen, that would be the kind of thing. I think that's a very interesting moment, and the more I read and learn about it, the more nuanced it is, actually dealing with all different types of people who, aren't necessarily neurotypical, and what they might need.
And what neurotypical even means in the 21st, it's like, if you've got someone, as you say, who's really introverted, actually what they need is a bit of chill time on their own with a good book.
And
please don't disturb me. Thank you very much. But I think because certainly over the last few decades, and when I was growing up, there was a push of, well, no, actually you need to be extroverted, and you need to be outgoing, and you need to be going out and talking to people, and you need to be doing this. And if you're an extrovert, which I am, brilliant. You do need to be doing it because it gives you energy. If you're an introvert, it saps the life out of you.
And then there's also the concept of intent and impact. When you're thinking about kindness or talking about kindness or thinking about it as a concept, like if somebody's intent of a kind act comes from sincerity and authenticity, then that will be good and it'll be great. But if the intention is not sincere, then there's a real danger that could cause somebody damage. And also the impact of an act of kindness. We'll take the flowers again as an example. Like you might give someone flowers as an act of kindness with an absolutely authentic for their birthday or something, but then they feel that they have to pay back something. And so that impact has not been the intent that you intended, if you like.
I see the word compassionate on your top, and I think that maybe comes into play there. That I think I read somewhere that one of the root meaning of compassion is to suffer with, and that actually if we have that approach with our kindness, that thinking about our church community, we've had people join us even just in the last year during lockdown who have been amazed that we're willing to suffer with and to celebrate with, and that we join with people at all walks of life where they're at. Similar to what you were saying, that it's not just about saying this is what I think you need at this point and we're going to deliver it and here's a package and then that's it. But being willing to sit with someone and listen and hear where they're at, and to suffer with, that being an act of kindness in and of itself, where people wouldn't expect that actually. They'd expect maybe a slightly more transactional approach rather than, hey, actually, do you know what? I'm a pastor, but I don't have all the answers. I can't tell you exactly what you need right now, but I'm willing to listen. Why don't we go on a journey with this? Why don't we get some other people involved as well? Because I don't have all the answers, but do you know what? Bob or Jill or whoever, do you know what? Why don't you connect in with her? And it being a team approach. And I think that can kind of counteract that instinct that some people might have of, I need to be the do-good, or I need to be the one who comes up with all the answers. I need to be the one who, and it's actually, do you know what? It's okay to say, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer at this point. I can't help you at this point, but let me introduce you to someone who might be able to.
Or just the power of listening. I think you've discovered this, Alison, in your organisation, just the power of just being able to sit and not broadcast and just listen. And actively listen properly. I went on a training course years and years ago. I used to be a mentor for breastfeeding, and before I went on the training course, the person I was compared to afterwards, after the 6 weeks of learning basically how to listen, was night and day. It just showed you how I've never been the most extroverted person, and I didn't think I was a broadcaster. But actually, after that course, I just thought, wow. I really wasn't listening properly. Incredible. So yeah, and I still bring that course into lots of work that we do at Belville, because so many people are just on broadcast mode or listening just to the things that they wanted to hear and what that person was saying, rather than actually what are they saying and what are they saying in what their body language is telling you, as well as actually what their words are telling you at that time.
That is key. It's kind of having that as Don was saying, that kind of with versus for
Yeah.
identity. You know, you don't. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this with you, and that's kind of where that co-journey and that kindness interaction is there. That actually we're being kind to each other, not because you're being kind to me, so I have to pay that back, but because you're being kind to me. But why would I not be kind to you? And often that is the kind of the thing where when you talk to someone that's never or doesn't remember anyone being kind to them or loving them or listening to them, that actually sitting down and saying, tell me your story, and actually listening to that story can be the most powerful thing that they have. I mean, we have our biggest attended thing that we do at the Salvation Army in Port Glasgow is our meet and eat coffee morning, not because it's really nice soup and really nice tea and coffee and really nice home bacon, which it all is, but actually because it was set up so that people could come and meet people and be heard. And some people will come in and they will talk for the whole 2 hours that we're open to the guys who are serving or the people that they're always at the table with, because that's become their little family on a Thursday morning. And actually that's the one thing that people have asked for during lockdown. When is that coming back? You know, not when is Sunday mornings coming back. When can I actually meet and listen and be listened to, and you know, ask people to pray for me and all those sorts of things that have that sense of community and how that looks like.
And I think it's an exciting time just now for Inverclyde, because I think we are on a journey. And I think we can build on all of these individual acts of kindness and how we've seen in different organisations, building on Inverclyde as a place and a community of people that kindness is at the heart, that, you know, like maybe you would want to come and live in Inverclyde because if you have a problem or an addiction or homeless or wealthy or Christian or non-Christian, it would be a place where kindness is at the absolute essence of how we listen to people and how we respond to our communities as a collective. Building on all these great things, using COVID as a springboard perhaps, build on all these great things in order that Inverclyde is just the most fantastic place to live.
Amazing.
And actually having that undercurrent of being known as a kind place to be, a compassionate place to be, a place where actually people are loved, I love each other, and not because it's some kind of snowflake, soppy, wishy-washy, whatever, but actually because it's where the rubber hits the road. And actually, when you talk to people about days gone by and, you know, all the rose-tinted spectacles come out about when there was lots of people, lots of industry, lots of jobs, actually what there was lots of was community. What there was lots of was relationship. What there was lots of was people looking after each other. And that's actually the stories of kindness, the stories that stick with us, aren't they? So, Now, I'm mindful of time, and I keep saying this at the end of all of them, but I need to try and not blether on because I know what I'm like. And I'm looking around the table and other people do as well. So, if you had one thing to take away from this little chat before we turn the microphones off, what would it be?
Oh, I think I'll take away what Alison was saying about radical kindness. I think, I've not heard that term before, but I'm going to really have a think about that over the weekend, Alison. So,
For me, it would be about listening and hearing where the person's at first, rather than maybe jumping in and making assumptions, but actually hearing where that person is at. And
I think for me, it's just building on the absolutely fantastic foundation that we have, and building on the kindness that's already there and making it bigger.
Well, thank you all for that. Thank you for joining us. Once again, as I've said at the end of the other podcast, if you want to be in touch or leave a comment below or ask any questions, please do that. Until then, hope you have a kind and hopeful and joyful time ahead of you whenever you're listening to this and wherever you're listening to this, and we will, or you will hear us on the next one. Goodbye and God bless.